doing? Welcome back. I'm CK with Under Pressure Power and Performance, and today we're going to be going over some of the revisions and improvements that we've made to our UPP Twin Turbo Kit here. Hopefully it should make a better kit overall for you guys, as well as easier to install. Alright, the first change that we're going to show today is going to be regarding the 90-degree brass fittings that are part of the heater core system. And we're going to be eliminating these completely. Basically, what we were doing on the first set of instructions that you guys watched is just rerouting the factory lines, so instead of coming straight out, they would actually make a 90-degree bend and then do a loop forward. What we're replacing those with is actually one-piece hose that already has our 90-degree bends in it, and if you'll notice, the hoses are actually two different sizes, which is the correct mating sequence for the outputs on the engine itself. So these are going to go in there the exact same way that the other ones did, with a 90-degree bend on it, and then it'll loop forward, come around on the passenger side frame rail, and plug into the heater core selector on the back. They are going to be just a hair too long, so one of them you're going to end up cutting down about 2 inches. The other one you're going to take about 6 inches off, so they will be cut to fit, but it's basically eliminating the need for the brass fitting and then the 2 extra hose clamps on each one where it's got extra places that it can leak, and we're just going to replace it with one solid line. For you 2004 guys, we've changed the upper radiator pipe. Now, the 0506, you guys already have your upper radiator pipe that's changed out with the polished aluminum one that changes the direction of it over here. For you 04 guys, once we get the up pipe and the turbo installed over here, it's really close to the output on the radiator, which comes from this upper corner here. So because of that, we've changed the upper radiator hose as well. Also what we've done, because we're eliminating the purge overflow that you guys have over on the corner, we're switching it out to traditional style radiator system. So it's got its own radiator fill cap along with its bleed port that's going to go to our coolant overflow when we're done. And this is pretty simple. It's basically just going to go in here like this. Now the 90s are going to be a little bit long, and usually on this side right here, what we'll end up doing is just take a razor blade and trim this down. That way it gets a little bit closer, depending on how much clearance room you have here. But this is basically on the 04 is going to sit in here just like this. And like I said, it gives us the addition of our radiator cap. Next up, what we're going to be replacing is the actual filter elements themselves. In the original one, we actually just had the foam mesh that went over it. Those have been proven when you get higher horsepower, they just don't flow quite enough. So we actually redesigned the system, and now we can fit full-size filter elements on there. So this one is going to go, this one will bolt up just to this side. This side here we redesigned completely to give it more room, so that way we can actually make room for the fitment of the filter in there. The only changes is now the factory radiator overflow for you guys with the 0506. The fill net comes out right there. We're going to actually remove that filler and the whole radiator reservoir. We're going to relocate it, and your kit will come with a different reservoir now. Next is going to be the oil line feed. Instead of doing the sandwich plate that we had in the previous instructions, we're actually going to show you just how to drill and tap this existing plate. It's going to be a lot easier than trying to grind down the tabs on each side, so that way the stud has enough clearance room to fit the sandwich plate in there. So what you're going to do is pull the cap off just like you normally would, but instead of sticking our sandwich feed plate in between there, which is already drilled and tapped, we're just going to drill and tap right into the cap that's on there and come off of there with our feed line. Next up, we're going to change the design layout of the spark plug wires themselves. Instead of them just coming over the side and going around into the spark plugs, we're actually going to route them really cleanly right across the top of the engine. They'll all loop around the back and come back up from underneath. In order to do that, the factory coil pack modules are going to be mounted like this. What we're going to do is actually pull this entire bracket off. You're going to take out the plastic that this electrical line was in, and we're going to flip the coil. So you can see this coil here is pointing down. This is the original location of it. And all we've done is taken them off and flipped them 180 degrees. And it's pretty simple to do that. Basically, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna have to pull the whole bracket off so you can loosen and take the slack with the wiring back here. Just take the coil pack off. You're gonna bring the wiring down to the bottom side and flip it around like that. Now all of them are facing, and they're going to be sitting on their an upwards position when you put it back on the car. Alright, so now that we've got our coil packs flipped upside down and reinstalled, we're going to go ahead and show you how the wiring goes for the spark plug wires. Now the spark plug wires are going to be the same thing, the custom make your own length. The lengths that you're going to want are going to be 50, 40, 30, and 20 inches for each side. So you're going to have 2 of them that are 50 inches long, 2 of them 40, 2 of them 30, and 2 of them 20 by the time you get done. 50s, of course, are going to go on the front of the engine, 20s will go to the back. Now the way that it's routed is you have your 90 degree that's going to come off of the top of it like this, and all of them are going to take the same direction and path, and they're going to go towards the back. You're going to loop it around from the bottom, or to the bottom here. And then it's going to come up right here underneath the manifold, but above the downpipe. And it'll plug into cylinder number 1. And then the next one, same thing, it'll take the same path, it'll flow around the back. That way it's a nice clean setup when you guys get done. All the wires are flowing in one direction, as opposed on that side before we had one that kind of went crooked in a different direction than all the rest of them. This will make it nice and simple and clean. Both sides are going to be done the same way, so all of the spark plug wires, when you get done, are going to be flowing right along the top like this. And they're all going to loop around the back and come up from the bottom. Now what you want to do on the bottom side is when you plug it in, let's say this one plugs into the first cylinder up front, when you do your next one and you plug this one into the next cylinder, you want to zip tie these together. And then you'll take the third one and plug it into the third cylinder like this, and again you want to zip tie all 3 of them. What this will do is this will help hold these wires up off and keep it from slacking down like that and resting on the downpipe, where of course it'll get melted. So when you get done, they should all be just like this across the bottom, and you just zip tie them together. That way each one will hold the one previous to it up. They'll go around the back of the engine and loop up forward like this. Alright, next what we're going to do is we're going to look at is going to be doing the spark plug wires and installing the ends on them. Now since they're going to route across the top, the length that you're going to want on that is 50 inches, 40 inches, 30 inches, and 20 inches. And you should have 2 of each. So first start off by cutting them to length. Now what we went ahead and do is get a cup of water, put it in the microwave for a couple minutes, get it nice and hot and warm, and then actually put the boots down in it. That's going to help heat the boots up without melting them. That way they're a little bit more pliable and a little bit more flexible. It is kind of tight squeeze going through there, so you might need to stretch them out a little bit, and just basically take your pliers and kind of, some needle nose work good on it, and it helps to stretch them. Once they're warmed up with the water, it'll make sure that they don't split open and just break and crack on you. Now it's also a good idea, you're going to need some lubricant. What works best is any of the water-based lubricants. Like Ideal makes one that you think you can get at Home Depot. It's for running wires in the housing and things like that. We don't have it, we're just using regular Air2 oil. So you want to go ahead and oil up down inside of the boot itself, and then we're going to take the wire and slide it on. Now when you do, you want to straighten this out as much as possible. That way it's got a straight shot going through it for the wire, and it doesn't have to make that 90-degree bend. Alright, now that we've got the wire nice and lubed up and we've got this straightened out and it's nice and warm, this should pretty much just slide right in. Now if you're having trouble and it seems like it's binding, it needs more lubricant on it, so we're just going to slide it through like that. Now that we've got the boot fully recessed on there, go ahead and trim it down. We want to take just about an inch or so off. And that's going to expose just the cord by itself there. Alright, so we're going to take the cord and we're going to bend it completely 180 degrees over. And these are the connectors that go on the end. You're going to place it in there like that, and then we're going to bend these two tabs back over and actually bite in and fold it into the spark plug wire itself. They do make a tool for this, or you can just use regular old channel locks. Make sure it's nice and tight, won't pull off of there, and that's basically what it looks like when we get done. See how it's actually biting into the wire and it's actually stabbing into it. And then we'll just slide our boot right back down. We're going to take a rag, wipe off the excess grease or lubricant that you used on it, and then that is one of the wires. Now the other end already comes with the 90 degrees on it, and those are the ends for the spark plugs. Just go ahead and leave those on there. We don't need to cut them up. That way you're only cutting and having to do the length on one end there. And then this will be our 90-degree boot for the coil side. Alright, as you can see, this is an 0506 with the smaller ECU. When you go 04 guys, we'll have the bigger ECU as well as the coolant reservoir that sits here. Now as far as the ECU goes, we're going to go ahead and relocate it inside the car. You 0506 guys don't have to do that, but we'd strongly recommend it just because of the amount of heat that's right in here. With all the wiring and that right next to it, it's a good idea to go ahead and relocate it inside the car. It's a fairly simple install. We'll get into that in a minute. But right now we're going to look at the coolant overflow that normally sits here. We're going to go ahead and remove that. Now there's three hoses going to it. The one on the top on the back is basically just a drain to bleed off the excess coolant. The second larger hose is going to go down to a hard tube that goes across the front and then comes up over by your heater core lines. Now with the new heater core lines that we provided with the kit, it'll automatically replace that T-junction that's in there. So you can just go ahead and get rid of that line completely that goes to the hard line. You leave the hard line in there because that's part of the main coolant line for your radiator, and then just remove the line that comes up to the reservoir here. Now the smaller line is going to go down to the radiator itself, and we're going to go ahead and disconnect that. Okay, so if you guys, this is an 04 radiator here, and you've got two ports on it. Now one of the ports was again going to the coolant overflow that we went ahead and removed. That line goes to right here. Your second line is going to go to the steam ports on top of both of the heads, which is actually right here. So what we're going to do is actually tee this line into here. So we've included a brass fitting, and you're basically just going to splice into this line and then reroute this line over here, so that way both of these ports are shared going to the steam line here. Okay, with those lines rerouted, now we've removed the radiator reservoir for the 04 guys. Again, you 05 guys are going to remove yours too. And with the addition of the upper coolant line, that's going to make a traditional radiator cap. So now at this time, both the 04 and the 0506 are going to need a coolant overflow. And we're going to show you that in just a minute. Basically, it's just a catch can that will collect the excess coolant that pours over, and then when the car cools back down, it'll suck it back into place. For the 0506 guys, it's easiest if we mount it right here. You 04 guys, some of you guys have your cruise control module here. You can mount it pretty much wherever you want. We ended up mounting it either here, or you can mount it down below behind the intercooler. If you mount it behind the intercooler, you don't have as easy of access to it as if you mount it up in here. But like I said, it's pretty much as long as you mount it vertically, you can mount it wherever you want. Now right here you can see where we've installed the coolant catch can, and it's attached right there to, bracketed right to the strut tower. Like I said before, you can mount it anywhere you want, just as long as it's a vertical position. Now you'll notice the brass fitting on the top there. There's also another one on the bottom. What those are for, the top one right here is basically just going to be a vent. So it's just going to be a short piece of hose, and then we're just going to tuck it down below. That way the air pressure can vent out of it, or if it does get overfilled, the overflow can vent out of it easily. The one on the bottom is what we're actually going to connect back up here to the radiator itself on the port for the radiator cap. For you 0506 guys, it's going to be the one that's closest to the driver's side, on a little bit higher on the top. For you 04 guys, it's actually going to be on the coolant pipe that we provide right here, the little port coming off right by your radiator fill cap. That way, when it gets hot, it'll actually push the coolant into there. As it expands, it'll take it up. When it cools back down, it'll suck it back out. That's why it's very important that the line from here goes to the bottom of the catch can. The top one is nothing more than a vent port. If you get it backwards, you'll basically just start dumping all of your coolant into the catch can here. Alright, next up what we're going to work on is relocating the ECU, which is this guy right here. Now for the 05, 06 guys, this is not mandatory, but it is highly recommended. For the 04 guys, it is mandatory. So start with, and it's going to be pretty much the same with either one that you go with. We're going to disconnect the 3 plugs going to the ECU here, and then if you look down here, there is a horn. We're going to go ahead and disconnect that as well. Okay, for next step on the ECU here, we're going to remove this plastic shield right here. That's actually where we're going to be relocating our ECU to. And right under that is where we're going to have to make our first disconnection. Alright, this white connector here is what we're going to be after. We need to disconnect that, and then we're actually going to pull it back through the firewall, through that grommet you could see right there at the bottom. That is going through the firewall, and that's going to be protruding out on the other side where we just get disconnected the ECU from. So what we're going to do is actually pull from the inside of the car out first, then we're going to flip the harness around and pull it backwards through to the inside of the car. Now in order to disconnect that grommet and pull it back out, there's 6 plastic tabs on it. And you need to put slight pressure on it going through the firewall, pushing it through from the inside, and push each one of the tabs down. Once you do that, they're kind of like a one-way tab where it's meant to click in but not back out. So one at a time, push them in, and then apply a little bit of pressure. Push the next one in, apply a little bit of pressure, and pretty soon you'll get it to where the whole thing will roll out. Once you get about 3 or 4 of them, it should, undone and loose, it should just pop right out. Once you get the first one, you kind of see how it goes. It's really easy to do. But then you're going to pull the harness with the connectors from the inside. Now, the 05 guys should just have the white one. The 04 guys, you guys are going to have actually, I think, 1 extra connector on the inside, and just go ahead and disconnect that. Because what we want to do is all of the wires with the harness that are going through the firewall here, we want to pull them back out. And that way, the whole harness is sitting up here in the engine bay to start with. Okay, this is the harness here that was connected inside the car, and this is the grommet where it goes through the firewall. And if you look close, you could see each of these tabs. There should be 6 of them. It's easiest if you have somebody from the outside pulling on it, giving it just a slight bit of tension, and then one at a time push these tabs down, and every time you pop one down, it'll slightly pull it out, and then go to the next one and pop it, pop it, pop it. And you got to get 3 or 4 of them done before it'll actually kink out of there, and then you can pop it and pull the whole thing out. So what we're going to do next is actually pull this apart. So remove the rubber grommet from it, and then this is actually a 2-piece part here, and we're going to go ahead and split it apart. You can see the interlock down there, so we're going to split it apart and take it off. So now we've taken the plastic part of the grommet off, split it into 2 pieces, and we can remove it. We're going to go ahead and set that aside because we're going to reuse it later, so you don't want to destroy it when you pull it off. Next is going to be the rubber part of the grommet, and what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to cut this off. Just cut around in a little circle right around the wiring. And then we're going to put 1 slit coming up. That way we can actually peel it off and take it off the wires. Alright, so now you can see we've actually trimmed it away from the wiring itself, and then we put 1 split in the top. This will allow us to take it off of the wiring. Go ahead and set this aside because we're going to reuse it later. Along with the plastic one, we'll actually reinstall them, and that'll give it the factory look in it when we get done. Next is the horn that's actually mounted in there. Go ahead and remove that temporarily for now. That'll give us a little bit more room to work with. Then you're going to start, and your wiring harness should look like this. You'll have the main one with the plug from the inside, and then two of the main ECU plugs, and then a separate one with the ECU plug. What we're going to do now is essentially, one at a time, feed these back through the hole that's in the firewall, and we're going to feed all of them through there. Next, we're going to modify the plastic part of the grommet. And what we're going to do, it's got a small hole in it. We're going to take a die grinder and grind it out. Now, if you 04 guys, you've only got a single wire going in there, it should clamp right back around the single wire just fine, so you won't actually have to do this part. But for the 05 guys, because it's actually 2 separate hard lines, in order to make room for it, we're going to need to grind this out. So go ahead and enlarge that just so you can die grinder it. Now, make note and take example. Don't cut through these little clips here where it's going to actually hold the 2 pieces together. You still want it to lock together like this as 1 piece when you're done, but we need to have enough room in there that we can fit both sets of the wires. Okay, now as you can see here, we've clamped the plastic ring back around it, and then we're going to put the rubber back around it. There's a split in the rubber, so it's not going to be perfect, but it'll help hold it and keep it from vibrating in that once we put it in there. You're going to want to pull the slack up on these, kind of make the 2 of them together, so that way when you pull it back, they'll go equal with each other. You're going to want to do the ring right before this main one here splits into two separate pieces, which will be right about the same place that this is our connector that's going to go to our horn that we removed up here. That's still got to stay inside the engine bay. So that's right about where you want to do the ring on it, and then just this other one, pull it up, and we have a little bit of slack in here so we can pull it through a little bit tighter if we need to once we actually go to install it. So now we're going to take this whole assembly and push it back down through and pull it from the inside of the car until this grommet locks in place again. Alright, now if we look right back down there, you can see we've got all the wires coming up from along here, and everything is just going to go right through that rubber grommet there and inside the car. Okay, going back inside the car, what we've done is removed this lower kick panel here, and that will expose where we're going to put our ECU, which is going to be right here. Now this one's just got this placeholder in it, so we're just going to go ahead and pop it out. For those of you guys that are automatics, some of you guys will have different modules down here, and that's fine, don't worry about it. Most of those modules can actually be relocated right up inside of here, and basically we'll just disconnect them from there, put them up under the dashboard here, and then zip tie them to something else. That way it holds them up out of the way, keeps them out of the way for your pedals and that. And this ECU is going to go mounted right here, and we're just going to go ahead and zip tie it in place, and then connect our electrical connectors to it, and we'll show you what it looks like when we get done. Alright, here you can see we've got the ECU all installed, zip tied up in the corner. We've got all the wiring going up and zip tied up and out of the way. It's pretty much what it should look like when you get done. Now the cover will go back over it and slip over it just fine. Now for you 04 guys, your ECU is going to be quite a bit bigger than this one, but don't worry, it'll still fit down here. And actually one of the little modules that is down here, usually you can fit between the fins on the 04 ECU. They'll have two separate sections of fins, and the other little module snaps right into, or sets right in between it really easily. Alright, now one last time, this is what it looks like with the kick panel and everything reinstalled. By the way, don't forget to install or reconnect that one white connector that we disconnected at the very beginning, or for you 04 guys, you guys are going to actually have two connectors to make sure you get connected up. But this is what it'll look like once we all get done. The next major revision that we've done is with the dump tubes. Now we've extended them to get all of the exhaust gases out from the engine bay and completely out from under the car. They're basically, it's a direct bolt on. This side here, you have to finagle a little bit to get it in there, and you kind of thread it in there. When you get done, it should be facing primarily towards the passenger side over here. The driver's side one slips in really easily. There is a stud that we're going to have to remove on the bottom. I'll show you that in just a second. It's basically where the angle bracket goes. For those of you guys that have long tube headers, you guys have already removed that bracket anyway. So we're going to go down and show you now what stud needs to be removed. You just clip it off, and then everything will slide in. This one extends fully down and it comes out just past the power steering rack, and this one on this side just past the power steering rack, pointing out to the right. Okay, now we're underneath the driver's side looking up, and right along the frame here you could see the two studs that we've actually removed for the clearance of the dump tube, which is right here. It's primarily just the top one on this. We went ahead and clipped both of them off just to make sure we got plenty of room for the downpipe and the dump tube together. So you're just going to reach up in there with a Sawzall, clip them off. Again, those are holding the bracket that goes between there and the firewall here itself. It's really not needed. Like I said, for most of the long tube header installs, it gets removed anyway. And that about finishes it up for this install. I'm CK with Under Pressure Power and Performance. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay tuned.